Alright, first order of business is to get these guys off because you can't sand anything with them on it. I mean, you can, but good practice to not deal with that. We have scuff behind that and sand it and all that. So that one and this one. Alright, next up, the first thing, this thing started. Been asleep for a minute. Thing still runs a treat though. Doesn't seem to matter how long it sits. Every time I start it, it's bang on. And then the other thing to do is to remove this, which there's a lot of ways to do this. You can use a fishing line, you can use pry tool or a plastic scraper and go behind there and get that off. What I'm personally going to do is use this, which I have saved in a very messy bundle. But this is actually the wire that is used to remove glass from cars. So this will do a fine job. This can cut through the urethane, this can cut through this double-sided tape, no problem. So take this and basically fish it behind there, off it comes. So basically, you said take this and you just fish it through. It'll come right off because the stuff's old and not much of it on there. Challenge sometimes with this is if it's a little bit thicker, so you can't quite always get it behind the piece without potentially doing some damage to it. But if you're smooth enough with it, just like that. And then the rest of this, I got another video on here that I'll link in the corner, but this is pretty easy to get off. There's a couple methods to do it. In this case, it's a little bit older, so it might just peel off, or I can use a plastic razor blade, which is probably what I'm going to do today. And I'll just knock that out real quick, and then we'll get to the sanding part. The first thing to do when doing body work is have a beer. Not really, but I like to because it's hot, and this is rather refreshing. So shout out these guys. But really, this is what we're going to be using. This is a 3M product. So this is kind of the mid-grade. So you have the red ones, you have the blue ones, and you have the purple ones. The purple ones are very expensive. I wasn't trying to spend that much, but this is an improvement over what I normally use. So this is what we're going to do. This is a hook it style, in other words, Velcro. So I'm going to, hook onto the back of our DA. Got that. Again, this is a 500 grit. You could use 320 if you're going to get deeper into the body work for what we would call a scuff and spray. This is plenty. So that is going to get hooked to one of these. This one, I use this for detailing, this one for body work. Keep them separate because dust and whatnot versus just compound dust, a little bit different. So that hooks onto there. And what this is an interface pad, so that kind of softens the edges a little bit and just allows it to contour into like an area like here. Whereas if you kept it on the back of the DA by itself, then it would just dig right there as opposed to being able to flex. So that's what these do. Put that there, put that on the back of your DA, run the face of the DA, and then you get it on there and you go to town. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to tape up these edges right here. I'm going to lift up the trunk and then support it in the middle so I can have it sitting up so I don't have to worry about these edges. I'm still going to tape them. And before I do any of that, I'm actually going to clean up the surface of this thing, get all this pollen and whatnot off before we start sanding, and that'll give us a much better result as opposed to just going straight into it like this. I'll just be moving around pollen and clogging this up a lot sooner. So without further ado, we tape. This is wax and grease remover. Should have used anything else, but it'll do the same job. Not the cleanest towel, but again, it's not like I'm about to lay paint. I'm just getting this stuff off. And this also gives a little bit of a gloss, so I can see if there's any dents. Which so far, there's a few. Oh yeah. There's one there. It's kind of a crease here, here, here. This is not going to be as simple as I foresaw. But that's why I do these things, so I can tell, you know, what I'm getting into and what I'm going to have to look forward to. It really seems to be isolated over there, so there's some ugly, not ugly, but you know, some creatures there. I'm going to have to do body work with this thing, so that means that I'm not even going to use the 500 over here. I'm going to go straight for the 320, perhaps even 180, so that the mud can stick to it and go from there. And then there's one dent above the roundo here. We'll fill that as well. I thought this was going to be simple. It is not. So then to list this, you can use about anything you want. I have to use a roll of sandpaper, nice and about the right height. So I stick it right there. The latch kind of sitting right in the middle of it. It's pretty solid, raises it up enough. And then we get the sander up. I'm going to go ahead and do the 500 grit portion first, just because I already have it on here. So I'll be going back here, over there, and then and I'll get around the edges too. And then as I get into where the actual damage is at, then I'll switch to the rougher grit. This paper's decent. Right there, another dent. It's another reason it's good to go ahead and go over all this stuff with a relatively flat pad, so then that'll help. You know, that's obviously a low spot. And then, like I said, there's more of those up there. So this is going along pretty good so far. I may go ahead and switch to the 320, just given how much body work I'm actually going to have to do on this thing. Like I said, I'll get the rest of this done with the 500 and then end up doing this half. I don't know what happened over here that, you know, caused these things, or placing stuff on top or whatever. But yeah, all the damage seems to be on this side. Over here is pretty good so far. About time for a new one. And we're back. So this is after 320 about here, back here, 500 over there, and down there. So the next thing that I'm going to do, now that that's out of the way, come back with this, spray it on there, while we wipe off this dust. And then you can see in the reflection, you may be able to see it, but you can see that those creases over here on the passenger side are still there. And there. Let it settle. You may be able to see that. Yeah. So you see right about, you see how that reflection changes right there? That's a crease. And there's another one that's back over here. So, do I think that they need severe mudding? No. I think instead what they probably need is just a glazing, in which I will use dolphin glaze, which is a little bit different and lighter than normal filler. Fillers come in like different weights, if that makes sense. And sometimes you got a crazy dent on like a bunch of, hammer and dolly work that you did, then you'll need to use a heavier filler. But I think for small things like that, surface imperfections, you can get away with using dolphin glaze. The sand's super easy, and I believe it can go on top of paint. I'll have to double check. But it's a fantastic product. I use it all the time. I just use it on the 8 for my last layer, and I've used it for years and years, since my model building days, actually. I used to use this stuff back then, and it's just a great product. So I like to use dolphin glaze. I'll show you what that is. But otherwise, this looks pretty good. There's a few smaller creases here. So I think what we're gonna do for the best outcome, and keeping in mind that the rest of the paint isn't perfect, the rest of the body's not perfect, but if we're gonna be painting, we may as well paint well. If we're gonna be doing body work, we may as well do it well. So I think what I'm gonna do is actually go ahead and 320, or even actually probably 180 the rest of this thing, and then I'll end up doing a primer on it, and then that'll build up some of these last bits of imperfections that I've got, in addition to what we're going to put the dolphin glaze on. And I think that'll get this thing pretty straight. So it's not perfectly straight, but it's also not awful. So I think right in the middle, with a good layer of primer on it and a little bit of dolphin glaze in the worst areas over here, this thing should look pretty good, because it's relatively flat. It really is. But there's just some imperfections on it that I don't like, and that they would bother me if I didn't fix them. So I'll get this stuff to stick now. Fish out of my mouth. It's not that subtle. So before this dries, there's one crease that's running from about here. Gosh, this is terribly in focus, but that's there. There's one there. There we go. You can see here, 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 and what we're seeing here is where the clear was, and that's left a bit of a high spot. So not even not a crease per se, but we can see where that clear was. The sun has been baking the rest of this stuff for who knows how long, and now we have a high spot where that clear was. So we can either 320 that, which I'll probably go ahead and do, and see if I can get that knocked down. And if you can't, then like I said, I'll just prime the whole thing and that'll go away. All right, so the answer is yes, I'm going to 320 all this to make sure that the rest of that clear is knocked down. You can't feel it, but like I said, when it's wet, you can see it, which actually you can kind of feel that. And if you can feel it, you can definitely see it later. And then once it's, cleared, that's what it's going to look like when it's wet, and then you'll see that little space. So that has to go. So we'll continue to 300 right here, or 320. Back here, I just got to throw on my body guys. And yeah, we're going to 180 like there, and then feather that out, and then do some mud work right there. Same thing with the creases up here. We're going to 180 around them, get our filler on there, dolphin glaze, and then block the rest of that out after it's primed. And yeah, we're gonna move on. Now, am I gonna record that? Not 100% sure, because it's very monotonous work. Not a whole lot going on. So I'm going to 180 this stuff. I'm going to hop to it, and I will report back shortly. All right, so the wax and grease remover is settled, and you can see right there, still that blob of where the clear was. And I guess the sun just baked out so much of the base that was there. And then you can also see a dent there and a crease right there and another small crease right there. It's very useful getting the surface wet so you can see what's, what it's going to look like when it's done. I mean, it's effectively like doing a guide coat, but this kind of lets you know where you need to work at. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and I'm gonna end up 180ing all of that and then prime basically from there over to about here, because that's where the damage seems to stop. So I'm gonna end up priming here, here, back there, back there. So about half of it is gonna get done. All right, this is the off and glaze, and as I've been sanding on this, notice some things that kind of confirm some of my concerns and suspicions, and that is the paint code for this car is 086, which is just Schwarz, which means black in German. And that means that it's a single stage. If it said, there's another way that the paint code reads basically that would tell you if it was base coat, clear coat, but 086 is a single stage black, which lines up with the rest of the paint on the car in that there's no clear coat failure, and the way that it's worn, you can tell that it's single stage, right? So with that, for some reason the previous owner or somebody decided to paint it, the hood and trunk, and use a base coat clear coat. That clear coat ultimately failed, which is what resulted to what we've seen. The other interesting thing I saw, so what we've seen here is that there's filler right there, or there's mud. So there's metal, there is probably epoxy primer, there is another primer, there's black, there's yellow, there's black, and then on top of that was clear. So that was the original paint right there. This is the new paint that was added. And the reason that stood out to me is because I've been sanding this for quite some time. So the reason I didn't record it, it took me forever to break through to the primer. So I've been broke through the clear in just the base, but then I got to this and stayed there for a long time before I broke into this, and then finally this. So in doing all of that, the crease seems to have disappeared, which was kind of giving me the same thing that was happening over here with the extra clear that was on top of that. The crease is gone. The dent right here is the only thing that's still there, because I mean you can visibly see it and you can also feel it, but the creases, I can't feel them anymore. So with that, this off and glaze, I read the TDS, it can go over sanded paint with 180, so it doesn't have to be DTM like a regular filler would, which is why I liked off and glaze. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go ahead, and I've done 180 on most of this, and I'm going to do a skim coat. I'm going to fill in this dent that's right here, this one that's on the back of the ridge, and then I'm going to just do a skim coat over about half the trunk here. And at that point, we'll block it with 180. We might be ready to ride. We'll find out when we prime it and block that, but for the time being, the fact that I cannot feel at all the crease or supposed crease, and seeing the evidence here of all this paint that's on here, that suggests to me that, well, it's possible that the crease was just in that paint for one reason or another. It could be that. So I'm going to go ahead and glaze this thing. I'm going to sand a little bit more, glaze it, and then move on to the primer, and then we'll see where the guide coat takes us after that. And then too, as I wipe this, this was a trick that I was taught from one of my body friends, that if you take a paper towel and put it between your hand and the surface when you rub on it, if there's any dents, for some reason the paper towel masks whatever's there and it'll mask it. It actually brings it out. It brings out the whatever you may be feeling that your hands may be, not sensitive enough to. So this just creates a layer between the surface and your hand. For some reason, allows you to feel what's going on a lot better than you could with just your bare hands. So yeah, I can't feel this damn crease. I don't know where it went, but this feels smooth. There's a little bit right here, but that's where I stopped sanding with 180. So I think the glaze and the primer as a pair are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for me in terms of getting this thing repaired. And then this dent here is going to take care of that. This one here this one here, and that one there. And those are the only dents that I found on the trim. So we should be in pretty good shape to just glaze and move forward. Again, if there's something we need to deal with after the fact, after the prime and after the block and everything, we'll do that. But I'm pretty confident in my experience that the glaze will take care of it. So we'll skim basically this whole area and then we'll prime it. See where we're at. So for the glaze, before that happens, more wax and grease remover, because you want it to actually stick to the paint or the surface and not the dust. If it sticks to dust, it'll fall back off. So spray that on there. Fresh paper towel, even though I just wiped it. See, I can't even see the crease anymore with that on there. So go ahead and wipe this out. Yeah, that looks so much better. So much better. Wipe this and see that's what the glaze would have had to stick to, and that would have been a good adhesion. So that's why we do this. Also, by fold, when I meant from detailing, when you fold your cloth, the paper towel, your whatever, you get much more use out of it than you would if you just widen it up and sent it. That's because I get 8 sides from a folded paper towel versus, you know, you can contaminate the whole thing when you bunch it up. So just getting cleaner. That should be ready to glaze. We're going to take this 18-inch long block with 180 grit on it, and we'll use this to shape this and shape it. But we're finding that them creases left when I sanded it, but I just did the skim coat just to be double sure that they were gone. So I mean, it's, to me, it's cheap insurance. This stuff, $30 a thing, a dolphin glaze. So I'd rather just throw a little bit on there and find out that it's completely flat, as opposed to thinking it's flat and then it not being flat. Alright, so I got sanded with 180, I primed it. Not super great, had some issues with the spraying out, but we're just going to guide coat it and sand it. So this is the powder guide coat. I use this because it doesn't clump up nearly as much as, say, like the spray does. I have a tendency to. You spread it. That's all. But you can hear how rough this stuff came out, so definitely needed to sand it for sure. But let's get the spread on there. Alright, and after the first round of, or quick round of blocking, I'm not really get the details yet, but you know, over the surface with the 18-inch board, the crease is gone. Feels great. Dent's gone. Other dent right there is gone. And then I think a little bit more primer on this, and that'll be gone too, or at least not noticeable at all. Everything else, yeah, it's turned out real smooth. And the other thing that turned out, or that did stand out, I suppose, is over here. We still kind of see it. That and right there, where that really weird texture was, where we had a buildup of paint. I think if we continue blocking this out, we'll get that knocked out. There. Again, I didn't really spend too much time. It was mostly over here. But I think, again, looks good, feels better. I'll tell you, if I didn't know better, I think I knew what I was doing. This is good. Looks real good. Reflection wise, and you can't really see it quite from the angle that we're at here, but it looks great and it feels great. I'm more than happy with that. So next up is to go up and hit the front, and look at my beard, man. Next up is to do the front and do the exact same thing that we did back here, but back here's done. Looks real good. I'm happy. That's not very good. I don't think it's supposed to do that. Call this a hand polish. Just really rub the clear. You know, I don't want to rub it off, but rub that shit off. Alright, so this is a testament to the quality of what some people do, where I've been chipping off paint from in here. It was so full down here that a roundo couldn't ever properly sit, you know, where it's supposed to sit. But this stuff is able to just be chipped off. I mean, it's pretty difficult to see the thickness of it, but you kind of can there. But the fact that it's just popping off in these, you know, decent sized pieces, I was never going to leave that way. Anyway, with that done, primer will take care of the rest of that. It's all cleaned out. Here is the hood after some 320 and some 500. That's kind of what we got collected right there. Not to mention those cicadas along with it, but yeah, the hood's pretty much ready for a coat of primer. Not on the whole thing. I'm just really going to dust it there, top edge. You know, anywhere that I had to burn through, like up there, the clear was failing completely up top, so I just said fuck that. Here, there, you know, like I said, dust coats of primer on there, and we'll feather those out, and then this is also ready for paint. Alright, so update on this. After doing the wax and grease remover spray down on it, it revealed that I'm definitely not going to be able to just feather the base from the clear. Most likely going to have to take all this off. And I mean, you can even see this is just a day later, right? But you can see that having left this clear on here even just a little bit and sanding it as much as I did, that we're still getting this lift. Meaning, had we sprayed base on that, that would be, you know, all the paint that I'd be putting on here would be starting to come up from right there and there and there. So in essence, all of this clear must come off. There is no blending it, feathering it. Like, we're not even going to worry about it. We're just going to flat out remove all of it, whether that's with 220, 320, and if you have to prime it, we'll have to, you know, that's what we got to do. I already got to prime this and a couple other areas, so, you know, that is what it is. But I'm glad that I let this sit. You know, stopped at a good time yesterday, let it get some sun exposure, and we're already seeing what would happen. So I'm going to sand this and check back in.
Your cock is the only tumor I have.
Okay, so I did not record the painting process because there was so much mist. You wouldn't see anything. I don't want glass on my phone. So here it is after. For a garage job, I think this came out pretty good. There's some dirt, which is to be expected. There is a couple fish eyes to be expected. But for something done right here at home, I'm not mad at that. It's workable. You know, a little heavier on the texture around here, but there's enough clear on it that I can sand it. One of the things that I did here was, or what I'm planning to do anyway, is to actually let this sit for a couple days and then come back and paint it again. So I'm going to let it sit, let that clear shrink down a little bit, and then I'm going to wet sand it or dry sand it with the DA using 800 grit. That's going to flatten out a lot of this texture. It'll take a lot of work off our hands when it comes to polishing. And then we will come back and clear it again. That last coat of clear should lay out pretty darn good. So I'm going to get this outside here in just a little bit. This stuff is still a little bit too tacky, so we're going to wait to get it out there. I mean, that's not bad. That's not bad. I'll wait just a little bit because you see the E34 sitting underneath that. See how windy that is. Don't want to take this outside and then have this stuff. That would suck. So it's just gonna sit in here. It's nice and warm. It's in good artistic company. And then I will check back in here in probably an hour when we pull it outside, and we'll see what it looks like in the sun. Hopefully it looks good. Hope. Alright, we are outside where I discover the most annoying thing. Dead center. A gnat. A freaking gnat. Smack in the middle of my shit. Whatever. We're re-clearing. Shitty, because the trunk actually turned out pretty good, I would argue. The hood has some less than ideal textures to it, but I mean, once it's all clean, it should be decent. I mean, I tell you what, it's better than it was, so I'm not really bugging too hard. Another thing I noticed though is I considered doing the fenders, because you've got your primer burned through, because this is single stage, that's dual stage, and now the hood looks so much better than the fenders that even with paint correction, which will further exacerbate that, now I kind of got to do the the fenders, which might work out schedule wise though, because then I can, you know, get those prepped and then paint those, and then when I go to re-clear the hood and the trunk, that'll be easy enough to do, you know, at the same time. The fenders don't need any major body work aside from, you know, rolling this lip back in. That's on both sides. But what I wanted to do, you know, my goal here was to get it so where I can polish this out, which it does polish out pretty well, as you saw in the first video, to where it would relatively match, like quality wise. Like I didn't want to go and paint the whole car. So we'll see if I'm able to pull that off, if I can kind of blend these things together and make them look, you know, cohesive, as opposed to just a really nice trunk, really nice hood, and, you know, the rest of it's well, it's all blend together well. That's the tough thing about doing spots on cars that are older like this, is that, well, you can get a really nice spot and then a not so great spot. And again, with the general wear of the car, I mean, realistically, if I wanted to maximize everything, I'd have to paint the whole thing. But that's just not what I was in the mood to do, and didn't have the budget for. So this is where we're at. Good morning, all. I gotta update you. So I had the perfect storm yesterday of why I just stopped working. But I'm back at it. Getting some sanding done there, 800 done there, and then the DA quit. But this morning, the way that I struggled to cap these off, oh my god. This is why I was doing the bumper on the car. yesterday, or at least up here, because I did not want to deal with that because of this. It was worse. I managed to get some of it up, but I ended up taking a piece of fuel hose and capping it on there. Like, it took me forever to figure out how to keep this thing from leaking. Because even after I put these lines up here, you would expect that gravity would allow the fluid to go back down and kind of rest. No, it kept coming out. So that's reflected here and here. But yeah, fuel hose on there. We finally got that done. So now we're gonna 800 all over the hood there. We've done some work up here on the fender. Again, don't want to go creating too much work for myself here. And then now with this in direct sunlight, I'm still on the fence, right? So this is gonna be fresh paint. I feel like if we didn't do this, there's just too many chips. There's too many chips. I was gonna see how it polishes out, but there's too many chips. So that's all painted. Couldn't really record it, like I said before, because it just gets full in here. Don't want that on my phone, but that's painted. It'll be wet sanded and all that fun stuff after it dries. Had a couple of issues with fish eyes and whatnot, but while that's drying, I am working on these. So see kind of a big difference between the two. This has been prepped and sanded, same trim black as before, and really all I did was just, again, window cleaner, gray Scotch-Brite, just get in there all the nooks and crannies and grooves and things like that, wax and grease remover, and then paint. I mean, I just dust the stuff on there to get that same texture, and that's what we end up with.